Shall we begin?
Hey friends, welcome back to the More Than Just Keto podcast. This is episode 21, and I am one of your hosts, Molly.
Hello, everyone. Today, we have something a little bit different for you guys. We know that the health and wellness journey is so much about mental health.
Yes.
One of the components that we talk about often in this community and here on the podcast is worthiness and just our worth as a person. We feel like there's so much to go over that we wanted to split this into two parts and talk about how worthiness has changed for us, how the meaning of being worthy has changed from the very beginning of our journey until now, what it used to look like for us and how we tied our worth into who we were and how that changed over time.
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about then what our worth meant, what being worthy meant, and how that played a role into our health and wellness journey.
Yes, this episode is so important. Seriously, we love all the episodes we've done so far, but we have very much looked forward to this one. And this one has been a very, we've talked about it a lot. And we want to make sure that we're giving y'all what you deserve in this, because this needs to be said. This needs to be shared. And we're calling this episode Worthy Then, Worthy Now, Part 1. And Part 2 will be the next episode. So let's get into it. This episode is so important, and it's something that Ashley and I talk about all the time. And what we have experienced ourselves and what we see and hear from other people is how they don't feel good enough, how they don't feel worthy, or they don't even feel like they deserve better. And we want to share our own experiences with this, but we also want to talk about maybe why we are this way, why we were this way. Because again, this is our past. This isn't where we are now. So we're going to take you back to our past and share with you the feeling of not feeling worthy. And like Ashley already said, how many times are we going to say worthy in this episode?
I said that when we were planning.
Yeah, we might say it quite a bit because it is all about that. But when we think of worthy, we think of something that has value. When we think of value, we think of something that's important to us. And why, oh, why do we not put ourselves on that list of importance? We are so good at not putting ourselves on a list of importance. And if anything, we're the most important, because without us, how are we going to help and figure out and fix and do what's important to us, the people around us? How are we going to take care of our families, our kids? How are we going to take care of the home that we value so much and we look at as so important? We take care of that. So basically, what it boils down to is if we find ourselves as important, we will take care of ourselves better.
And here's where I think that as a listener, you could be under the impression that maybe you don't feel like you're not feeling less worthy than, or you may not feel like you don't fully identify with that, right? So you're like, well, I do care about myself and I do.
Right.
But what we're trying to pull back and peel the layers on this is that it goes much deeper than you think, that some of the actions that you are doing are actually a result of not feeling that way. And that you may not even realize that you're in a cycle of self-doubt and maybe even doing things like being selfless to try to make yourself feel more worthy.
Yes.
There's a lot of things we do as women and mothers, and as it just in people, as in, people pleasing in general, that we do to try to tie our worth into something. And you may be listening and think, well, I do think I'm worthy. I think we all think that. But when we're specifically talking about weight loss and living a lifestyle or creating a lifestyle and talking about a wellness journey, we really need to look back on how we're treating ourselves, how we're talking to ourselves.
Yes.
And that's what you're saying is,
yes.
why are we not cognizant of the way we talk to ourselves and the way we're treating ourselves, the way that
we're talking about ourselves.
Right. How we allow other people to talk to us.
Right.
There's so many things tied into our worthiness and our worth that I think sometimes don't always correlate.
And quite often, and I've experienced this talking to different people in my past as well as myself, a lot of times the reason we don't feel good enough or we don't feel that we're that important is because maybe we were told that, or maybe we were treated like we didn't deserve better. And so because of that, we believed that and we took that as our own opinion and our own view of ourselves. Why do we do this? And we know why we do it. Somewhere along the way, someone's going to tell you you're not good enough, right? Somehow, some way, they're going to treat you that way. God forbid it's a parent, but there are parents that do that to their kids. Or it's a spouse, or it's a friend, or it's a teacher. Because like my sister had that when she was in college. Her teacher said, you'll never be a teacher. You will never make it as a teacher. And you know what my sister did? She quit. She changed over her future because someone told her she couldn't be a teacher. Why do we let people do that to us? Why do we let people tell us who we can and cannot be, what we can and cannot do? Because what they're doing is they are telling us the lies that we begin to believe. Because if someone tells you enough consistently good stuff or bad stuff, it becomes a part of you. You do become, you do start believing that, and then you take it as your own feelings and your own beliefs. And that's when we start talking negatively about ourselves. We start talking negatively to ourselves, like you were saying before.
Or you've done it to yourself in some way where you have picked up negative things. Maybe it's failure. Maybe it's an experience in life that you continue to disappoint yourself, or it's just circumstances that happen to you that you aren't able to overcome, or you're not able to achieve things, and you start to give yourself that negative dialogue, regardless of how it starts. At some point, this has happened to you.
Yeah.
And you've devalued some part of your life along that road up until this point that you decide something's got to change.
Yeah.
And maybe at the time it's only weight loss that you think that you're after, but I believe this wholeheartedly, that it is so much more than weight loss, that it's actually all that mental stuff and all that negativity that leads us to making more negative choices, or more,
well, not caring for ourselves the way we could. Because again, it'll always go back to we don't think we're worth it. So if you're not worth it, if you don't think you're worth it, why would you take the time and trouble to feed yourself well, to move your body because you know it's good for you to do that? Like, why would you do that? You wouldn't do it because you don't think that of yourself. It all starts as a weight loss journey. But my gosh, has it ever evolved to so much more? Because you're taking the behaviors that you're doing with your weight loss journey and you're applying it to other things in your life. And it just makes everything better.
Yeah. And I've said this a million times. You are going to start off on your journey and you're going to be like, I want to look like this. I want to look like this. And there is nothing wrong with I want to look like this. If that is what actually gets you moving, ride that wave.
Yeah.
The reason that this is so important, and I think the reason that we've dedicated a whole entire episode just to this part, is that will only get you so far.
Right.
So if you're not going back in time and looking at your past behavior, because that's what this is about. Mm-hmm. If you're not going back in time and looking at how you're talking to yourself, how you've been talked to, what your self-worth is, take inventory right now where you are. Do you think when you look in the mirror, do you compliment yourself at all? Are there things you like about yourself as a person, not just in the mirror, but as a person?
Yeah.
Are there things you're proud of? All of those things should matter now. Happening. They matter
now. They matter now.
Right now.
You can't wait.
They matter so much.
Yes. And when you recognize that now, when you do get to the point of the physical appearance that you're hoping for, the weight that you're looking to get to, whatever it is you're trying to get to, if you're looking at those things now and appreciating them now, that is that accepting yourself that you hear everybody talk about. Because sometimes you can hear accept yourself. It's like, oh, but I'm not, because I don't want to stay like this. Well, that's not what accepting yourself means. Accepting yourself is, girl, you're not perfect, but nobody is. And it's okay that you don't love really everything about you.
Exactly. And you're great at
but you have good qualities. So find those. You have good inner qualities and you have good physical qualities. You do.
Of course. It's very easy for us to say, I hate the way I look. I
Right.
hate the way I treat myself. I hate the way my clothes fit. I hate the way I look in this. I hate,
Yeah. Yeah. Ugh.
hate. And we use that hate, okay? A lot of us do this. You use that hate to fuel you.
Mm.
Okay, so you get all that hate and you're like, I am just so sick of this. I don't want to be this person. I don't want to look like this person. And you use that to get the wheel turning, right? That's like,
Mm.
I'm going to change everything. This is where you start to see you are just destroying in your mind all the things you don't like, you're going to wipe away in one day. And I'm going
Yeah.
to tell you,
In
don't
one
do that.
day. Right. Right.
Slow it down. It's okay. Sit with the hate. It's not going anywhere. You've got to
Right.
learn to let it ride with you, but not ride you, because it will never get you where you want to be. There has to come a moment where maybe you're so sad and you're so sick and tired and you have the hate and you let that fuel you a little bit. But you do have to start looking at yourself in a better way.
Yeah. That's very good.
You have to start looking at yourself and saying, this is what I like. I want it to be better.
Better. Yeah.
This is what I love about myself. I want it to be better. How can I make this better? If you take all of that negativity and start to put it to work in a better way and whipping that thought process around from I hate this to, you know what is great? I love that I'm pear-shaped. I want it to be better. I
Mm-hmm.
love that I like these outfits and I want to wear that, so I'm going to look better, or whatever it is that fuels you, right? To just get started. Your hate will only get you so far.
Right.
It isn't enough to change your life. It's enough to change your day in a couple weeks, but it isn't enough to make a marked change for your future.
Right.
That comes from healing. And that's what this is about. This is about taking self-inventory, really understanding where you are as a human, not as a weight, as a, like, those things you already know, because that's why you started your journey. This is about healing, because when the
Yeah.
mind heals, the body heals, and the relationship with food also starts to heal. And
That's
that's
true.
ultimately what we want to do, is heal those relationships with ourselves, with our
Mm-hmm.
food, with the people around us, because we become better when we do better.
So what you're saying right now just brings me back to thinking about when I hated myself. I didn't grow up hating myself, but what happened was I married a man and I ended up hating myself through his eyes because things that he would do, he's my ex-husband, and things he would do, like he'd call me names or he'd pinch my fat on my stomach. He'd tell me I was lazy. He would express different ways of saying that he didn't like the way I appeared. He never said you're fat and ugly, but he always,
But it was always
it's
talking
what
about
I
it.
believed he was telling me without telling me, you know?
Yeah.
And
That's
so
awful.
him criticizing me or putting me down, certainly I criticized myself after that. You know, I'm looking in the mirror and I'm finding all the faults. I'm seeing the extra on my chin. I'm seeing my belly is there and I'm seeing that I'm bigger. And I began to feel ugly because I didn't look a certain way. And so before he and we did divorce, by the way. I kicked him to the curb, by the way. But
Good for you.
before we did, I began dieting and I lost weight. Diet, lost weight, right? So when we divorced, I had already gotten thin. So problem solved, right? No, problem was not solved because a few years later, I remarried. Well, I remarried, and a few years later, I gained weight after 2 miscarriages and a baby. So I hadn't had the weight problem and I hadn't had to deal with the emotional part of the weight problem again because I didn't have that problem. And so I had a new husband, a new relationship. So when I gained the weight, guess how I saw myself? Fat, lazy, ugly,
Just like
self-critical,
before. All
just
those
like I
negative
felt
things
because I
creep back in.
never worked here. I only
You just took
lost
care of
the
the outside.
weight.
Yeah.
Exactly, like we were just talking about. So I had a wonderful husband who's still my husband now. He never criticized me. He never pinched my fat. I gained weight. I had 2 miscarriages and a baby. I put on a lot of weight. he never criticized me, but I had the old thinking that came right back, and I was,
That trauma response to
yes,
that, all that damage. Yeah.
yes. And it's because I had gone back to being overweight, so I was challenged, and that's where my
Yeah.
brain went. So I automatically started to criticize myself, see myself a certain way, and definitely not feel worthy. Again, not because someone didn't make me feel worthy, and not because my ex-husband was in my life telling me I was fat and lazy. It was
Yeah,
just
that was it
never
was
healed.
conditioned into your brain at
Yes,
that point. Yeah.
exactly. Like you said earlier, it's about healing. I never healed from that. I just lost the weight, which is
Yeah.
exactly what we're saying is not going to work. You have to do the inner part. I
Well,
didn't
we
do
see it
it
happen all the time, the regain
all the
on
time.
our feeds. And no one certainly is immune to that. That can
No,
happen to
not at
any one of
all.
us at any time. And I'm really aware that that could happen
Yeah,
at any time. And that's where the mental work comes in.
absolutely. And that's exactly what I had to do. And so it took me a long time to relearn how to view myself because, like I said, before I married that first man, I loved myself. I was like, girl, I never saw
As you
myself in a
should.
bad light. It just, because my mom always made me feel beautiful.
Aw.
So, and my dad, and the influence in your life does have an influence, good or bad.
It's a
And so
huge deal, yeah.
I definitely changed by that relationship, and I allowed what he viewed to become my view. And that was just the physical
Yeah,
part.
your
I'm not
inner
even getting
dialogue
into the
was
depths of the
manipulated by someone else.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it took purposeful work on myself to relearn how to see myself. It took, here's the big kicker, it took me taking responsibility for myself. It took me proving to myself, that I wasn't fat and lazy, not trying to prove it to anybody else, but to myself. And I had to learn that I was worthy, not because anyone said I was, but because I decided I was. And I decided I was because it was true. It wasn't a feeling, it was a decision. And I firmly believe you have to decide that you're worthy, because if you're always going by your feelings, you're going to be disappointed. You can't just go by feelings. What do they
That's
say?
like
Fake
going
it
by
till
the
you
scale
make
for
it.
the only, yes, and that's like going to the scale for the only tool and feedback.
Right.
It's not it's not enough.
Right. And so the more I see, so that's what I'm saying. I didn't necessarily believe it, but I decided it was true. I decided I was important. And when I did that, that's when I started treating myself better. That's when I started treating myself like I was important, like I treated the other things I found important, like my husband and my kids and my home and my car and things like that. I just became another important thing in my life. And that is truly
Yeah,
how
that's
it
amazing.
happened. So that was my story. It's funny how it tied into what you said,
I know.
because it's true. How
I know.
perfect was that? Because you said you could lose the weight, but if you didn't do this, you didn't heal. Wow. It's not about what you look
Because
like,
that's true.
it's about who you are. Girl, I got chills. Anyway, that was my
That's good
story.
stuff.
That was my story.
Okay.
So,
That was good. That was really good. So I think for me, it wasn't as pronounced of a moment that I maybe felt this unworthiness. I don't even think that maybe I realized that that was actually what it was. Like that was
mhm,
the word that fits, or just less than. I never really correlated so much my weight into feeling less than. I just didn't like the way I looked. I wanted to be different, and I didn't really correlate or make that connection. And I think
mhm,
that's why I'm so passionate about having these conversations, because it really, really does speak to doing the emotional work that I think is required. So for me, in a different way of feeling less than, I would have this constant situation where people would comment um on my makeup or my face or my hair, and they would very specifically do so.
mhm.
So things like, wow, you have such a pretty face. Wow, I love your makeup. Always pointing to the
Yeah,
face. Oh,
yeah,
your makeup and your hair is just so beautiful. But very specific,
yeah,
like very specifically. If someone commented about my body, it was always like, oh, you're very curvy. You've got lots of curves. It was never like just a compliment though. It was never like a full compliment. That's the way it felt.
Right.
And even if people didn't mean it that way, I always, I think deep down, internalized it as that
Right.
dialogue that I was creating for myself. And it it impacted me in a way that I don't think I was really aware. It was very subliminal, but when I look back now, I think I was creating an internal dialogue that I really wasn't aware of. And by people continuing to compliment me on my makeup and my hair and my face, I started associating that with that my body wasn't good enough. And I don't think I realized this at the time. It's now that I look back, I really do realize that that's why I put all of the time and effort. It's why my makeup could never not be perfect. It's why I would never take pictures or go to the grocery store without being hair, makeup done. Like I felt insecure on a level that I don't even think I was fully conscious of.
Isn't that something?
And it's taken a lot of work looking back
Mm-hmm.
to realize that that was actually part of a narrative that other people were giving that I just took as my own,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yes, that's what we do. We
And
tend to do that.
we just adopt others' thinking
Yes.
and we apply it to ourselves because we've been
Why do
told.
we
And it's
do
so
that?
funny that if we hear it enough, we believe it.
It's true. It's true.
And it doesn't even have to be true.
Right.
So by being told, well, wow, you have such a pretty face, your makeup, I mean, just, and it was always about that. You know, the saddest thing to me is that I've lost the weight now and they don't say that to me anymore. They just say, "Oh, you're pretty. I like your makeup."
Isn't that something? Isn't that
And it's not
something?
all this waving to the face and just only addressing my face, or it's just, "Wow, I really love your makeup," or "Wow, you're really pretty," or
Yeah.
like that's
Like
stopped.
more
When I started
general as
losing weight,
opposed
all
to,
of a
yeah.
sudden other people saw me as just different.
Yeah.
And that makes me sad because I don't ever want to validate that as in now I've made it, because that is not the truth.
No, right. No,
That
no, no.
that is not, just because people have changed how they treat me doesn't mean that now I get to change how I treat myself based on what they think.
Right, right. But isn't it interesting how you're able to look back and see this? Because
Yeah, because
when
this
we're
is
in it, we don't
years in the
see
making.
it.
No.
But when we look back on it, we can totally see it so clearly, quite
It's
often.
very clear to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of things like growing up, I didn't struggle with weight as much. There was a lot of things, I think, just life circumstances, going through having babies and my hormones changed so much. I really was unaware of like
Yeah.
how quickly I put this weight on and I did not know how to get out of it. There was a
Right.
feeling, like a sinking feeling of like I'm in trouble. I'm drowning. And I'm sure you've felt this way at some point. You like hit a certain point where like, oh, what? Oh, I don't know how to get out of this, you
Oh
know?
yeah. Oh yeah. Mine was listen, after my first child, I was 24. I was thin my entire life up until that point. I had him, I was thin again right away. But somewhere in that year, I put on the pounds, honey, because I
Yeah,
stopped
it's like your
moving and I
hormones just
kept
can't.
eating.
Yeah.
But one day, I will never forget this day. I was at my neighbor's house and they had the bathroom that has like the mirrors like there, like to the side and to the front. And I'm standing there and then all of a sudden I see my profile and I see a double chin. And I was like, what is that? Wait, what is that? Because I'd never had one before. So it was a moment that I will never forget. I was like, what happened? Wait, how did this happen? And then all
Yeah,
of a
the
sudden I
panic sets
realized,
in.
yeah, it's like, how did,
Yeah.
and then I went shopping, I remember, for a dress for his first birthday, and I had to buy like a size that I'd never bought before. It was wild. So yes, I do know what you're saying, and you do. You just feel like, wait, how do I fix this? How did this happen?
Yeah.
Because it does. It just
It
happens.
just kind of happens. And then all of a sudden you go from wearing your favorite clothes to not being able to shop in a regular store almost
Right.
without feeling like
Yeah.
you can't wear anything.
It's
And
true.
then that ties
That's a
into
wake
your
up call.
clothing and all of
Mm-hmm.
these things change. It's a huge wake up call and it makes you feel like, well, if I can't even shop in a regular store, or if I, can only have five things to choose from, or I'm shopping in sizes that are meant for only certain bodies that I can't just buy. There's so many things that go into that and make you
Yeah.
feel like you're not a part of a
Worthy.
regular society because you don't Right.
Which makes you feel unworthy, and you're not unworthy.
Which makes you feel unworthy, and you're not.
You're not. You're
That's
just wearing a larger
one
size.
part of your journey.
Right.
That's just one part. And I think that's a big thing. It's like thinking about that's just now.
Yeah.
You don't have to stay there. But
no, don't
it's
stay
very
there.
hard to realize that this is just a spot in your journey. That if you do keep going, that you won't stay here. And the whole point is never to stay here. You don't want to be in the same spot next year or next month. I don't care if you lose all the weight. You still don't want to be there. Mentally,
you want to keep evolving.
So much more.
Yes.
And keep changing into the person that you're meant to be. The whole point here is not to just end up with the body that you want. Because I'm here to tell you that doesn't just solve everything. Things don't just fix themselves. You don't just like lose weight and then like you have no skin or you have no stretch marks or you don't have anything. Like it's just perfect. You woke up and you're like, now I'm a Barbie.
It's all good. Good now, right?
That's
not going to happen. That is a fairy tale.
Not true. That's not true.
Not true.
Because I'm here to tell you, speaking from my own personal life and journey and story, if I wanted to be honest, there are more things now that I might not like about my body than actually before. Like, honestly.
Right. It changes.
There are things that I was not equipped mentally to deal with that have happened. There are things that I didn't realize I wouldn't or would like. And nobody can prepare you for that. So we're going to try. No, I'm just kidding.
We are trying.
You may think you lose the weight and that's going to make everything better, that you are going to be better, that everything in your life is going to be better, including things that have nothing to do with weight. I'm here to tell you that is not always true.
When we lose all the weight, we have this thought that everything's going to be perfect. We believe that if I lose the weight, everything will be fine and I'll be happy and it'll fix everything. And we have that expectation. But what we've learned is it's not about what we look like.
It's about who we are and who we're becoming.
Yes.
What we look like is only one part. If you only focus on that one part, there's a chance that that's where it ends for you.
Yeah. You're missing so much.
So much more. This can actually become a lifelong change that you make if you're willing to put all the pieces together. And that means doing this stuff, right? All the stuff in between, all the stuff nobody wants to do, right? All the hard mental work.
It's all hard. Well,
because if we know anything, expectations are everything.
Yeah. Yes. Preach,
and
sister.
Setting the right expectations. We'll tell you what happens in part 2.
Yeah, because we've run out of time, people. Yeah. We hope y'all join us for our next episode, which is part 2 of Worthy Then, Worthy Now. Thank y'all for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.
We'll see you on part 2.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us today. You can find and connect with us over on Instagram at More Than Just Keto. Don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss out on the fun. We'll see you next time.